Also, I don't want to spoil the next video, but Cinderella 3 is better than the original. Okay, bye. Stop recording. Sorry, press the wrong button. Start recording and let's go! It's time for part 2. Or is it? You see, you may be sitting there all high and mighty thinking, yes, Seamus, it is time for part 2. I have waited a week for this video and you're not about to tell me this isn't it. But actually, off screen just then as I finished my Cinderella 2 video, I accidentally pressed the wrong button on my camera, the SET button, or obviously, as you know, the start everting time button, and reversed the clock to before I filmed, edited, or even wrote this video all the way back to when I first watched Cinderella 3, where I jokingly wrote in my notes before I started, I am fully expecting this to be a crazy mad time travel story. But then, what I got was spectacular. And I couldn't wait, I simply had to record it right in that moment, before the heatwave, before the Cinderella 2 video. Cinderella 3, a twist in time. See, I'm not gonna lie, if that didn't set the tone, this is gonna be a little bit different to my other Disney sequels videos. I actually thoroughly enjoyed this film. Thoroughly. I'm gonna nitpick a bit, but most of this video is gonna be spent praising this masterpiece. Yeah, I said it. And you know what? Right from the off, I was taken aback because they decided to just completely ignore the events of Cinderella 2 and basically erase it from the canon. Like, it takes place a year after the wedding this time, so after the events of Cinderella 2, but they ignore that whole storyline where Anastasia meets the baker and, well, basically anything that happened in Cinderella 2 isn't acknowledged. And when they introduce the stepsisters, they outright say, "We've not once been invited to a ball," which we know isn't true in line with Cinderella 2. And while yes, this may be considered a bad thing, Cinderella 2 is at best, so to completely disregard it, that takes confidence. Like, they are setting the tone for this film by saying, it's gonna be so good, you're gonna wish it was the only Cinderella sequel by the end. And I respect that, and low-key kinda wish they called it The Real Cinderella 2. You know, kinda like how Pixar called their film from 2017 The Real Cars 2, because there's only 2 Cars films. And, you know, even The Real Cars 2 wasn't actually. But despite all these great strides, the film still decided it wanted to redeem Anastasia. Like, I thought we just did that. But let's do it again. So Anastasia, who is still the likable stepsister, apparently is once again desperate for love, and therefore we have to like her again. As she runs off to go watch Cinderella and the prince celebrate their first wedding anniversary, where she sees the fairy godmother and understands that's how Cinderella did it. Then going on to make the rational decision all good, likable characters would make, she must steal the wand. And if you're thinking, well, surely that'll be hard to do, the fairy godmother's on screen in the first Cinderella film for exactly 2 minutes, 41 seconds, and 8 milliseconds and doesn't let go of the wand once. To which I say, how on earth do you know that? Like, I get having the general thought, but just having the number on hand? I don't even like Toy Story that much. But also, don't worry, Anastasia getting the wand is super easy, barely any trouble.
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
The fairy godmother just drops it right in front of her. Which is why I always say, if you're a fairy or a witch or a wizard of any sort, never let go of your wand unless you're Draco Malfoy. And letting go of your wand in that specific moment gives Harry ownership of another wand that you didn't know you actually owned, indirectly saving the entire world. In that case, you can maybe let go of your wand, but that happens like once every few years. Tops. Anyway, so Anastasia brings the wand back to her family and they quickly realize this is the secret to changing their fates. Wow, that was the worst Scottish accent I've ever done. Or anyone's ever done, for that matter. Sorry, I thought I'd do like a brave joke, but that was just awful, I'm sorry. And the fairy godmother then tries to get the wand back, but Anastasia, quickly learning how to use it, turns her into stone in another classic episode of Disney sequel fake-out deaths. And, I mean, I say classic episode, but I'm lying. Usually a fake-out death is done, so you assume the character is gone and therefore can't help, only for them to swoop in and save the day at the end. But in this one, the fairy godmother is actually gone for the entirety of the film. Like, up until the very, very end, after the day is saved, when they finally decide to bring her back, meaning the most powerful character was out of action for this entire film, massively raising the stakes, and what the hell, did you just do a fake-out death effectively? And so then the plot fully gets set into motion as the stepmother takes the wand for herself, turning back time to before Cinderella tried on the slipper and married the prince, which, yes, if you haven't seen it and are genuinely wondering, This is a crazy mad time travel story, and I love it, which may surprise some of you, because I imagine I may have given off an impression in a video or two that maybe I don't like time travel stories that much. But it's not true. I do. I really do, as long as they're done right. But how can time travel be done right? It's literally a fictional concept, I hear you ask. Well, it's not really that hard. It's super easy.
Some men.
Since time travel's a fictional concept, you can literally create your own rules about how it works within your universe. And as long as you stick to those rules, I'm fine with it. And yes, massively ignoring the ramifications of the butterfly effect does count as breaking the rules, even if it's not explicitly said in the story, and will make me very upset. But that doesn't apply here, because the rules of time travel in this story are actually very simple. The stepmother creates an alternate timeline from this point a year behind. Everyone present for the spell remains the way they are, but anyone who wasn't present seems to return to their former year-ago self. So, yeah, I don't know if it was actually that simple, but I can assure you, they don't break their own rules once, making it, and I'm saying this unironically, the perfect time travel movie. What did I tell you? Masterpiece! So the major change made in this timeline is that when the king's professional shoe testers, or whatever they're supposed to be, try the shoe on Anastasia, it magically happens to fit. Meaning, therefore, Anastasia must be the mystery girl from the ball, because there can only be one girl in the entire kingdom with that shoe size, right? To be honest, in Cinderella 1, yeah, that is exactly what would have happened. Anastasia marries the prince, he has no idea, and they all live happily ever after. Except Cinderella. She's kind of sad and confused, talking to mice or something. But this film is different. As all good Disney sequels are, it's kind of self-aware and makes fun of the original, with the king in literally his first scene laughing at the prince for thinking there's only one size 4.5 in the entire kingdom.
You think there's only one woman in the whole kingdom who wears a size 4.5?
It's all I have to go on here.
And actually, I think this is an area they actively improve upon the original with. The prince is genuinely a good character. It's almost a cliche in these self-entitled Disney princess movies that you can switch out the Prince Charming for a plank of wood and the story hardly even changes. And this isn't even like an old movies thing, with the most recent Disney princess films being Frozen and Moana either having an evil prince or a non-existent one, with the actual love interest in Frozen, while being pretty helpful, doesn't even provide true love's kiss when needed, and then spends the whole sequel moping around feeling sorry for himself. And you know what? A Kristoff-looking plank of wood would do just fine. Sven does all the heavy lifting anyway. And yes, I intentionally left out Tangle because Flynn Rider is actually very cool and I like him. Point is, the prince is actually interesting and engaging to watch. Like, when Anastasia first arrives at the castle as the one the shoe finally fit, he turns her away. He goes, yeah, it must have been a mistake. Surprisingly, he knew the shoe must have fit more than one person. And I'm genuinely surprised. Like, I thought he would have just gone along with it, but the stepmother has to cast a spell on him to believe that Anastasia was with him at the ball. Which brings us on to Cinderella's side of the story. And I know this is going to be a hot take, but I actually think they improve her in this story too. Now, in the first film, she's fine. Not dislikable in any way, but she's always a bit too vanilla for me. And the only reason her story takes place is because she happens to have a fairy godmother paving the path for her. Whereas in Cinderella 3, the fairy godmother, as I mentioned, is out of action, and therefore Cinderella has to go about things her way in a much more adventure-style story. And I don't know, but I found her a much more enjoyable character to watch, and not even starting on all the young girls who'd have been watching this as a much more empowering character to look up to. She disguises herself as a servant, infiltrating her way into the palace with the plan of meeting the prince before he meets Anastasia, knowing he will remember her from the ball. And when she does, he kind of remembers her. He's already under the spell, but it almost gets broken. You know, there's a lot of this no magic is more powerful than true love sort of undertone going on, meaning every now and again when Cinderella interacts with the prince, or the more time he spends with Anastasia, you get the feeling the spell could be broken if he starts to realize that maybe something's up, but then they don't quite break it ever. And actually, on the topic of Anastasia's character, I also think she's significantly more compelling in this film. Yes, it's teased from the start that she might be the nice one and they might be about to give her a redemption arc, but she still steals the wand and takes Cinderella's place with the prince. However, the more the stepmother keeps putting the prince under her spell to convince him he did spend that night at the ball with Anastasia, we start to see some form of character growth from her, where she realizes maybe she doesn't want to just be in a loveless marriage and actually wants to find her own true love. Which, I mean, it's a much more fleshed out character arc than the second one, I'll tell you that. And then, of course, if we're going through the characters, there's also the mice, who go with Cinderella to the castle in the hope of getting the message to the prince that he's about to marry the wrong person. And I don't like the mice. There's no point being around the bush. I find them extremely annoying. Like, I want to say to them the kind of things people say to me in my comments section. But you know what? I think they're incorporated into this film well. They find out the prince has been cast under this spell by the stepmother, by watching it happen and then tell Cinderella that that's what happened, and then they all plan a heist to steal the wand from the room. Yeah, a time heist. So yeah, Cinderella and the mice make a plan to break into Anastasia's room so they can steal the wand for themselves and explain to the prince what happened, and it is insane. The mice accidentally set Lucifer's tail on fire and use this as a distraction to steal the wand from the drawer it's been put in. Cinderella pretends to be a maid and goes in to clear up the mess, and I'm just like, no, it can't be that easy, and that's when the stepmother catches her, except, I mean, her and the mice still do get away with the wand, and just as she's about to lift the spell, and by that I mean as she takes almost 10 seconds to say bibbity bobbity boo, she gets stopped by the guards. Oh my god, she has so much time and I'm not over it. I don't even feel sorry for her anymore. You deserve to get banished. And I mean, she tries to tell the prince he's under a spell before she gets taken away and touches his hand, which almost breaks the spell because there's this whole weird thing going on where, like, if you touch someone's hand, you know you're in love with them. It keeps coming up. But rest assured, it all remains a mess. Cinderella's on a ship being taken as far away from the kingdom as possible. The prince is just really confused. He doesn't know what's going on, but he's about to marry Anastasia, who herself doesn't even know if she wants to marry the prince anymore. And that's when the mice finally intervene. They explain everything that's happened to the prince, and it all just makes perfect sense to him. The talking mice say it's the wrong girl, to quote him, before he jumps out the window. Yeah, that actually happens, which honestly, I think that might be the best Disney prince moment ever. You can't top that. He jumped out the window, and while to this day I'm still not 100% sure how he managed to get onto Cinderella's boat, he did, and it all works out. They agree to get married, and it looks like they're gonna live happily ever after until the stepmother decides we need a final act. And I thought we'd been treated nicely enough, you know, with the whole jumping out the window shenanigans, but ignorant I was. This is a time travel movie. We were almost an hour in, and not once had two versions of the same character shared screen time, which is like time travel movie 101, and I guess I thought they didn't have it in them, but the stepmother had an ace up her sleeves as she literally turns Anastasia into Cinderella to go ahead with the wedding as planned.
What have you done?
This movie has genuinely impressed me. Like, I think they should have given the stepmother the wand in the first film. That would have been so much more exciting. And I thought her plan was pretty good, but for some reason, she doesn't kill Cinderella here. Like, I don't know if the wand can actually kill, but at least turn her into something useless. It would have been so easy from here. But instead, she traps Cinderella in an evil pumpkin being ridden by a human Lucifer, and Cinderella manages to get out of the pumpkin and dispose of Lucifer and turn him back into a cat somehow. Like, I don't know how she did that really easily. Like, I am happy this film made Cinderella a total badass as she rides a horse back to the kingdom for her own wedding, but I don't know why stepmother didn't just kill her. I mean, it wouldn't have entirely worked since Anastasia was getting that character arc and stops the wedding just before Cinderella runs in, only for the stepmother to just go completely ham on everyone with the wand, like hitting anyone and everyone. I'm like, how are you supposed to stop her? She has a magic wand. No one else has this power. Like, she's actually unstoppable. But fortunately, the prince's sword is a special magic deflecting sword or something, and it deflects the spell onto her, and she gets turned into a frog. Yeah, and that's actually how it ends. Also, the other stepsister, who I haven't really mentioned in this video, was also there the entire time and also gets turned into a frog, which I felt was a bit of an unfair punishment because she didn't really do that much. She was just kind of there. I didn't even feel a need to mention her. Then finally, as I've already mentioned, Cinderella brings the fairy godmother back, and I thought they were just going to reset the timeline, restore everything back to where it was at the start, and kind of just make the entire story pointless other than a bit of character growth. Because every single time travel movie just loves to do that, and yes, I'm looking at you, Shrek 4, and don't think that gets you off the hook, Shrek 3. You committed a far greater crime. But in this, they actually stick with the new timeline. Like, the fairy godmother offers them a chance to return back to their old lives, but they don't take it, meaning the version of events where Cinderella 2 happened definitely doesn't exist anymore. But you know what, Anastasia? You still might have a chance with the baker guy in the future. I mean, your YouTube commenter, math teacher wannabe's favorite ship of all time, so you've got that going for you. And you're probably wondering how I know someone commented that if I haven't released the Cinderella 2 video yet. And, well, yeah, I'm sorry. Time travel makes me lie. I didn't actually film this video before the Cinderella 2 video. Look. The Cinderella 2 video, I released it last week and it's already got 86,000 views. And I did that entire bit at the start because the black shirt I filmed the Cinderella free tease in the outro was in the wash when I was scripting this video. But then by the time the script was done, the shirt was out the wash, but I'd come so far and I was like, I might as well do a time travel bit since it's a time travel movie. And all in all, it was pointless. Matter of fact, I don't want to ruin this whole video, but the start averting time button, it's actually just the set button, and pressing it did basically nothing. Start recording and let's go! It's time for part 2. Or is it? You see, you may be sitting there all high and mighty thinking, yes, Seamus, it is time for part 2. I have waited a week for this video and you're not about to tell me this isn't it. But actually, yeah, this is part 2. You've just watched the whole video. The only thing I haven't done is ranked the film, and, well, I genuinely think it was better than the original. And I'll admit it, I initially thought the Disney sequels would peak with Lion King 1.5. I would have bet my top dollar we wouldn't top a 6, but Cinderella, I think that's a solid film on its own. Like, it doesn't resonate with me as a classic as much as other people, but it's still a 7, and that means this is a 7.5 out of 10. But it's not just a good Disney sequel, it's a good film in its own right, and honestly, I think this series is peaking here, but I'm still going to be here to review the awful sequels, so make sure to comment down below what sequels I should do next, because I actually have no idea which ones you want to see. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. You can subscribe to my channel by clicking here. You can check out another Disney sequels video in the Disney sequels playlist by clicking here. You can check out my Patreon, which I just mentioned here and in the description down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.